Growing up in Hartford, Connecticut, I always knew I was living in my brother's shadow. My name is Catherine, but everyone calls me Kate, and for as long as I can remember, Marcus has been the star of our family. Dad would light up whenever Marcus walked into the room, and Mom would practically glow with pride talking about his achievements. Meanwhile, I felt like I was constantly trying to prove myself, always coming up short. Our house on Maple Street was one of those classic New England colonials with white shutters and a wraparound porch. Dad had built his construction company, Brennan and Sons, from the ground up, starting with just a pickup truck and a toolbox when he was barely out of high school. By the time Marcus and I were teenagers, the company employed over 50 people and had contracts all over central Connecticut. The irony wasn't lost on me that the company was called Brennan and Sons when Dad only had one son. Marcus was 3 years older than me, quarterback of the high school football team, honor roll student, and everything Dad had ever dreamed of in a son. I was the daughter who tagged along to construction sites, asking too many questions and getting in the way. I remember one particular Saturday morning when I was 16. The October air was crisp, and the maple trees lining our street were ablaze with red and gold leaves. I had gotten up early to help Dad with paperwork for the company, something I'd been doing for months, trying to show him I was serious about the business. I'd taught myself basic accounting and had even caught a few billing errors that could have cost us money. When I walked into Dad's home office, Marcus was already there, sitting in the leather chair across from Dad's desk. They were laughing about something, probably another one of Marcus's college stories. He was a junior at UConn, studying business, and Dad hung on his every word about his classes and internships. "Morning, sweetheart," Dad said when he noticed me in the doorway. "Marcus and I were just talking about his summer internship plans. Tell her about that opportunity in Boston, son." Marcus leaned back in the chair, that confident smile I knew so well spreading across his face. "Yeah, there's this development company that works on high-end residential projects. They want me to work with their project management team. It'll be great experience for when I join the family business." When I join the family business. Not if, when. It was always assumed that Marcus would step into Dad's shoes eventually, despite the fact that I was the one who spent every free moment learning about construction, reading trade magazines, and asking contractors about their techniques. "That sounds wonderful," I said, trying to keep the disappointment out of my voice. "Dad, I had some questions about the Morrison project budget." Dad glanced at the papers I was holding, then back at Marcus. "Can it wait, Kate? Marcus and I are in the middle of something important here." That word, important, hit me like a punch to the stomach. The work I'd been doing, the late nights I'd spent organizing files and creating spreadsheets, none of it was important enough to interrupt a conversation about Marcus's bright future. I nodded and backed out of the room, but I could still hear their voices as I walked down the hallway. Dad was explaining the intricacies of commercial contracts to Marcus, the same information I'd been begging him to teach me for years. The difference was that Marcus was getting the information handed to him on a silver platter, while I had to fight for every scrap of knowledge. This pattern continued through high school and into college. I went to Central Connecticut State University, staying close to home so I could continue working part-time for the company. I majored in construction management and business administration, taking extra courses in project management and cost estimation. Every semester I'd show Dad my grades, straight A's, hoping for some recognition, some sign that he saw my potential. Meanwhile, Marcus coasted through his business degree at UConn, more focused on his social life than his studies. But whenever he came home for holidays or weekends, Dad would parade him around job sites, introducing him to contractors and clients as my son, the future of Brennan and Sons. The summer after I graduated college, I finally worked up the courage to ask Dad directly about my future with the company. We were standing in the trailer that served as our on-site office for a shopping center renovation in West Hartford. The air conditioning was broken, and the Connecticut humidity made the small space feel like a sauna. "Dad," I said, wiping sweat from my forehead as I reviewed the day's progress reports. "I've been thinking about my career path with the company. I know Marcus is planning to join after graduation, but I was hoping we could talk about where I fit in." Dad looked up from the blueprints he was studying, his weathered face creased with confusion. "What do you mean, honey?" You've got a good job here. You're great with the administrative stuff. Administrative stuff. 4 years of college, countless hours learning every aspect of the construction business. And he saw me as administrative support. I was thinking more along the lines of project management, maybe eventually working toward a leadership role. I've been studying construction management, and I think I could really contribute to the growth of the company. Dad set down his pencil and looked at me with the kind of patient expression you'd give a child who'd asked for something unreasonable. Kate, sweetheart, this is a tough business. It's not really suitable for women. You've got to deal with rough contractors, work in dangerous conditions, make hard decisions that affect people's livelihoods. Marcus has been preparing for this his whole life. So have I said quietly. Maybe not in the same way, but I've been here, learning, working, proving myself. I know you have, and I appreciate it. But when Marcus joins the company next year, he's going to need someone he can rely on to handle the office management, the scheduling, that sort of thing. You'd be perfect for that role. The office manager. The person who handled Marcus's calendar and made sure his coffee was ready in the morning. I felt something crack inside my chest, like a foundation settling under too much weight. That conversation happened on a Thursday. By Monday morning, I had accepted a position with Hartford Development Group, one of Brennan & Sons' biggest competitors. The decision to leave Brennan & Sons was the hardest thing I'd ever done, but it was also the most liberating. At Hartford Development Group, I wasn't Bill Brennan's daughter or Marcus's little sister. I was Kate Brennan, construction management graduate with a strong work ethic and something to prove. My first day at HDG was in late August, and I could feel the weight of uncertainty in my stomach as I walked into their downtown Hartford office building. The lobby was all glass and steel, a stark contrast to the cozy chaos of Dad's construction trailers. Sarah Mitchell, the senior project manager who would be my supervisor, met me at the elevator. "Welcome to HDG, Kate," she said with a warm smile. Sarah was in her 40s, with short auburn hair and the kind of confident demeanor I'd always admired in successful women. "I've heard great things about your academic record and your experience with smaller residential projects." What she didn't say, but what I knew she was thinking, was that she'd also heard about my father's company and probably wondered why I'd chosen to work for the competition instead of staying in the family business. My first project was a mid-size office complex in Farmington, nothing glamorous, but it was mine to manage from start to finish. I threw myself into the work with an intensity that surprised even me. Every morning, I was on site by 7, coffee in hand, reviewing progress with the foreman and subcontractors. Every evening, I stayed late updating schedules and budgets, making sure every detail was perfect. The Connecticut autumn was particularly beautiful that year, and I found myself appreciating the changing seasons in a way I never had before. The crisp air and brilliant foliage seemed to mirror the change happening in my own life. For the first time, I felt like I was building something that was truly mine. 3 months into the job, Sarah called me into her office on a Friday afternoon. The October sun was streaming through her corner windows, casting warm light across her desk, covered with project plans and coffee-stained reports. "Kate, I wanted to talk to you about your performance so far," she said, gesturing for me to sit in the chair across from her desk. My heart sank. Had I made some crucial mistake? Had my inexperience shown more than I'd realized? "Your work on the Farmington project has been exceptional," Sarah continued, and I felt the tension in my shoulders release. "You've brought it in under budget and ahead of schedule, which is rare for someone so new to project management. More importantly, the client specifically requested you for their next project." I couldn't hide my smile. "Really? Really? But I have to ask, and please don't take this the wrong way, but have you considered what this means for your relationship with your family's company? I know this industry can be complicated when it comes to family dynamics." I had considered it, every single day. Dad barely spoke to me anymore, and our family dinners had become tense affairs where Mom tried desperately to keep the conversation on neutral topics. Marcus had called me once, asking why I'd betrayed the family, as if choosing to build my own career was an act of war. "I understand the complications," I told Sarah, "but I need to prove to myself, and maybe to them, that I'm capable of succeeding on my own merits." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. I respect that. And I think you should know that there's talk upstairs about fast-tracking you for senior project manager. If you keep performing at this level, you could be running your own division within a few years. Driving home that evening through the winding roads of West Hartford, I felt a mixture of pride and sadness. The maple trees were nearly bare now, their leaves carpeting the ground in shades of amber and rust. I was succeeding beyond my wildest expectations, but the cost was the growing distance between me and my family. The situation at home reached a breaking point during Thanksgiving dinner. The whole extended family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, gathered around Mom's dining room table with its lace tablecloth and good china. The smell of turkey and stuffing filled the house, and under normal circumstances, it would have been my favorite day of the year. But as soon as the conversation turned to work, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus has been doing fantastic at the company, Dad announced, carving the turkey with more force than necessary. He's already taking on major client relationships. Natural-born leader, just like I always knew he'd be. That's wonderful, Aunt Helen said. And what about Kate? How's your new job, honey? The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting to see how I'd handle this obviously loaded question. It's going very well, I said carefully. I'm managing several projects, and we've had some great successes. Must be nice, Marcus said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Working for Dad's competition. Really shows family loyalty. Marcus, Mom warned, but he wasn't finished. No, seriously, Kate. Do you realize how this looks? Dad's own daughter working for HDG? They probably hired you just to get inside information about our projects. I felt my cheeks burning, but I kept my voice steady. They hired me because I'm qualified for the job, and I would never share confidential information from any company, including Dad's. Right, Marcus scoffed, because you're so ethical and professional. Unlike the rest of us family business types. That was when Dad finally spoke up, but not in the way I'd hoped. Enough, both of you, he said firmly. Kate made her choice. She wanted to go her own way, and that's her right. But don't expect the rest of us to pretend it doesn't hurt. The rest of dinner passed in uncomfortable silence, broken only by forced conversations about the weather and distant relatives. I left immediately after dessert, claiming I had work to catch up on, which wasn't entirely untrue. As winter settled over Connecticut, bringing with it the kind of gray, bone-chilling cold that seeps into your soul, I threw myself even deeper into my work. The Farmington project was completed successfully, and I was immediately assigned to a larger residential development in Avon. The client was a high-end developer known for demanding perfection, and Sarah made it clear that this project would be a real test of my abilities. The work was challenging in ways I hadn't expected. Managing multiple subcontractors, dealing with permit delays, and keeping demanding clients happy required skills I was still developing. But with each obstacle I overcame, I felt myself growing stronger and more confident. One particularly difficult day in January, when a plumbing contractor had installed the wrong fixtures in half the units, and the client was threatening to find a new project manager, I found myself sitting in my car in the parking lot, fighting back tears of frustration. That's when my phone rang. It was Sarah. "Kate, I just got off the phone with the client," she said. "He wanted to tell me personally how impressed he's been with your handling of today's crisis. Apparently, you not only found a solution to the fixture problem, but negotiated a discount with the supplier that will actually save money on the overall project." I felt a surge of pride that was stronger than any praise I'd ever received from Dad. "There's something else," Sarah continued. "The partners have been discussing your future here, and we'd like to offer you a promotion to senior project manager, effective immediately. It comes with a significant salary increase and your own team of junior managers. At 25, I would be one of the youngest senior project managers in HDG's history. It was everything I'd worked for, everything I'd dreamed of when I made the difficult decision to leave the family business. But as I drove home through the snowy Hartford streets that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that my success was incomplete somehow. I was proving myself professionally, but the rift with my family seemed to grow wider every day. Dad and I barely spoke. Marcus treated me like a traitor, and even Mom seemed uncomfortable around me, as if she didn't know how to bridge the gap between her husband's disappointment and her daughter's ambitions. I had no idea that everything was about to change in ways I never could have imagined. The call came on a Tuesday morning in March, just as the Connecticut winter was finally loosening its grip and the first hints of spring were beginning to show. I was in my new office at HDG, reviewing cost estimates for a commercial project in Stamford, when my phone rang. Mom's name appeared on the screen, which was unusual. She rarely called me at work. "Kate, honey." Her voice was shaky, and I immediately knew something was wrong. "I need you to come to Hartford Hospital right away. Your father's had a heart attack." The drive to the hospital was a blur of panic and regret. Every argument we'd had, every cold dinner, every missed opportunity to reconcile played through my mind like a cruel slideshow. The March air was crisp but not cold, and I could smell that distinctive scent of snow melting and earth awakening that meant winter was finally ending. When I reached the cardiac unit, I found Mom and Marcus huddled together in the waiting room. Marcus looked up when I walked in, and for the first time in months, there was no hostility in his eyes, only fear. "How is he?" I asked, sitting down beside Mom and taking her hand. "Stable for now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "The doctors say the next 24 hours are critical. It was a massive heart attack, Kate. If the paramedics had arrived even 5 minutes later..." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. We spent the rest of that day and most of the night in the hospital, taking turns sitting with Dad when the nurses allowed brief visits. He looked so small and vulnerable, connected to all those machines, nothing like the strong, decisive man who had built a construction empire from nothing. During one of my visits, when he was awake and alert, Dad reached for my hand. "Kate," he said, his voice hoarse from the breathing tube they'd removed earlier. "I'm sorry. I've been a stubborn old fool. Dad, don't worry about that now. Just focus on getting better. No, I need to say this. I was wrong about you, about what you could do. Your mother's been telling me about your success at HDG, how proud she is of you. I should have seen it sooner. I should have given you the chance you deserved." Tears ran down my cheeks as I squeezed his hand. "I love you, Dad. That's all that matters now." Over the following weeks, as Dad slowly recovered, our family began to heal as well. The crisis had stripped away all the petty resentments and hurt feelings, leaving only the love we'd always had for each other. Marcus and I started talking again, really talking, for the first time in years. "I owe you an apology," he said one evening as we sat in the hospital cafeteria, sharing terrible coffee and stale sandwiches. "I was jealous, Kate. Can you believe that? I was actually jealous of you." "Jealous of me?" "Marcus, you were always Dad's favorite. You were the golden child." He shook his head, running his hands through his dark hair. "That's what made it worse. Everything was just handed to me. I never had to prove myself, never had to fight for anything. And then you went out there and actually earned your success, showed real courage by leaving and making it on your own. I felt like such a fraud." "You're not a fraud, Marcus. You're good at what you do." "Maybe, but I've never been tested the way you have. I've never had to wonder if people respect me for who I am, or just because I'm Bill Brennan's son." As April arrived and brought with it the full beauty of a Connecticut spring, Dad was finally ready to come home. The dogwood trees in our neighborhood were blooming in clouds of white and pink, and the air was filled with the promise of new beginnings. But Dad's recovery revealed another challenge none of us had anticipated. The heart attack had taken more out of him than any of us realized. He tired easily, had difficulty concentrating for long periods, and his doctor was very clear that returning to the high-stress environment of running a construction company was out of the question, at least for the foreseeable future. "The company needs leadership," Dad said during a family meeting in early May. We were sitting on the back porch of the house where Marcus and I had grown up, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I can't do it anymore, not the way it needs to be done." "You don't need to worry about that right now," Mom said. "Your health is the priority." "No, Linda, this can't wait. We have contracts, employees, obligations. The company has to keep moving forward." That's when he turned to Marcus and me, his expression serious but calm. I need to make a decision about who's going to run Brennan and Sons, and I need to make it soon. The board of directors, our clients, everyone needs to know there's a clear succession plan in place. Marcus shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Dad, you know I'm ready to step up. I've been preparing for this my whole life. I know you have, son, and you've done good work these past 2 years. But Kate, you've proven something different. You've shown that you can succeed in this business not because of your last name, but because of your skills and determination. I felt my heart racing. Was Dad actually considering me for leadership of the company? I've made a decision, Dad continued. But it's not the decision you might expect. Instead of just naming a successor, I'm going to give you both the chance to prove yourselves. Over the next 6 months, you'll each lead a major project for the company. At the end of that period, I'll choose who becomes the new president of Brennan and Sons based on performance, leadership ability, and vision for the company's future. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of evening birds and the distant hum of traffic on the main road. What kind of projects? Marcus asked finally. Kate, HDG has offered to sell us a commercial development project they can't complete due to scheduling conflicts. It's a challenging job with tight deadlines and a demanding client. If you're willing to come back to Brennan and Sons, that would be your project. My mind was reeling. Come back to the family company? Compete directly with Marcus for control? It was everything I'd dreamed of and everything I'd feared, all wrapped up in one impossible decision. And Marcus, Dad continued, there's a residential development in Glastonbury that requires not just construction expertise but significant business development and client relationship management. It would be a chance to show your leadership skills on multiple levels. Dad, I said slowly, what about my job at HDG? I can't just abandon the projects I'm working on, the people who trusted me. I've already spoken with Sarah Mitchell, Dad replied. She understands the situation, and HDG is willing to work out a temporary arrangement. If you choose not to stay with Brennan and Sons after the 6 months, you can return to your position there. Marcus was staring at me across the porch, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. Part of him probably hoped I'd say no, that I'd stay at HDG and leave him the clear path to inheriting the company, but another part of him, the brother I'd grown up with, seemed to be challenging me to accept. So what do you say? Dad asked. Are you both willing to do this? I looked out at the garden where Mom's daffodils were blooming in bright yellow clusters, thinking about how much my life had changed since that October morning when I'd first walked into Dad's office with questions about the Morrison project budget. I'd built a successful career, proven myself in a competitive industry, and earned the respect of colleagues who had no reason to favor me. But this wasn't just about business success anymore. This was about family, about healing the wounds that had kept us apart, and about finding out once and for all if I truly belonged in the company that bore our name. Yes, I said finally. I'll do it. Marcus nodded as well. Me too. Good, Dad said. And for the first time since his heart attack, I saw the spark of excitement in his eyes that I remembered from my childhood. Then let's see what you're both really made of. The next 6 months were unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Returning to Brennan and Sons felt strange at first, but I threw myself into the commercial project Dad had assigned me, a mixed-use development in downtown Hartford that the previous contractor had abandoned half-finished. The building was a mess of code violations and structural problems, but I was determined to prove myself. Working with Tom Rodriguez, one of Dad's most experienced foremen, I reorganized the entire project timeline and addressed each problem systematically. The turning point came when we discovered a major structural issue that could have compromised the entire building. The client, James Patterson, was furious and threatened to fire us, but I convinced him to give us a chance, personally guaranteeing that we would deliver on time and under budget. You're putting your family's company at significant financial risk with that guarantee, Patterson told me. Yes, sir, I am. Because I believe in my team, and I believe we can deliver what we're promising. Meanwhile, Marcus was struggling with his residential project in Glastonbury. The demanding homeowners and cost overruns were taking their toll, and I could see the stress wearing on him. The 6-month evaluation period ended in November. Dad called us into the conference room, and I could feel my heart pounding as he prepared to make his decision. "I want to start by saying how proud I am of both of you," Dad began. "Kate, what you accomplished with the Hartford project exceeded every expectation. You showed real leadership and turned an impossible situation into one of our most successful jobs of the year." He paused, looking at both of us seriously. "Kate, I'm offering you the position of president of Brennan & Sons, effective January 1st. The silence was deafening. I felt a rush of triumph mixed with concern for Marcus. "Marcus," Dad continued, "I'm hoping you'll accept the position of vice president of operations. This company needs both of your skills." Marcus was quiet for a long moment before looking up with tears in his eyes, but smiling. "Kate deserves this," he said simply. "She's earned it in ways I never have. And Dad, I'd be honored to work for her as vice president." That evening, our family gathered for dinner for the first time in months. As we sat around the familiar table with snow beginning to fall outside, I realized everything had come full circle. "So, what's your first priority as the new president?" Marcus asked. I thought about it, watching the snow fall softly outside. "Building a company that creates opportunities for everyone willing to work for them, regardless of their gender or their last name," I said. "A place where people are valued for their contributions, not their connections." Dad reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I think that sounds like exactly what Brennan & Sons needs. Sometimes the best victories are the ones that heal old wounds while opening new doors." I had finally stepped out of Marcus's shadow, but in a way that brought our family closer together rather than tearing it apart. The golden child and the underdog had both found their place, and Brennan & Sons was stronger for it.